I just had that.
Yep. That's good.
Since 2017.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Beautiful fall day. Serviceberries are going into dormancy for the winter, having produced shade and food. Pretty leaves. Yeah. So we are gathered really in response to an invitation from our ministry partner, All Nations Indian Church, which is a congregation that shares with us in the Lilly Grant program. They likewise are working with their children through this grant. And they're right along Franklin Avenue. They're one of the important institutions in the Indigenous community, have been there since 1987. We'll learn more about them next week. But they issued an invitation to their ministry partners for a community book read of this beautiful little book, The Serviceberry, Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World. And we're going to try to, how many people have read any or all of this book?
Oh,
Great. We'll expect contributions. Gift economy here. But we're not assuming that anyone has read it. Okay. So as we enter this time of trying to receive the wisdom of the Indigenous community, learn more about our ministry partners, but also grow ourselves into that wisdom and see how it might challenge and change our perspectives. We'll begin with prayer.
Did you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Dorothy Bass. I think everybody here knows me, and this is Amy Blumenshine. And we were invited and semi-volunteered. We were volunteered to help the congregation receive this gift from our ministry partners.
Well, congratulations for getting here. And we know the hustle bustle of the morning. And so we're going to start as we usually do, and open with prayer, but initially, let's do some centering breaths. And the centering breath not only has neuropsychological connection, but it also connects us to those life-giving substances that we interact with on a moment-by-moment basis. And part of what we're desiring to turn to today is more appreciation for our physical connectivity to our surrounding, and of course gratitude for that. So please join me in 3 deep breaths, which I'll try to demonstrate here. So move in. Breathe in. Breathe in. And please join me in the prayer that is printed on this slip of paper, which you get to take home. Creator God, we give thanks for the gifts that surround us, the service berries, the sunrise, the breath in our lungs. Open our eyes to see abundance where we once saw scarcity. Help us receive with grateful hearts. Amen.
This is the book we've been invited to share. It is, and some of you have read it. Has anybody read Braiding Sweetgrass, which was a book by the same author? Longer. She is a citizen of the Potawatomi people, grew up in upstate New York, went to forestry school at the State University of New York, and then to Madison, to the University of Wisconsin for PhDs in botany. She's an academic botanist. But her inspiration to study plants came from her own childhood experience of love of the outdoors and her desire to share the wisdom of her people. There are two things going on really. One is response to climate change. And many people in the climate community are advocating an approach called biomimicry. Learn from the plants. We need clean water. How does nature make clean water? If we need clean air, how does nature do that? There are lots of more complicated and intricate things going on as well. And actually, some of that knowledge was already known to and practiced by Indigenous people as they lived in harmony with the land on which they knew they depended for their lives. They knew they depended on the other creatures. Sometimes we forget that. Okay, so we thought it was important just to get Robin Wall Kimmerer's voice into this room. So I'm going to show a little clip from a recent interview, which will lift up the main themes of this book.
Yeah, you've invited the author. I know. It always does. Yeah, there we go. Why did you?
With me and resist it as best as I can.
I want to ask about your latest work, the Serviceberry. Can you tell me a little bit about the Serviceberry and why you chose the Serviceberry as the symbol for this work? What does it teach us about abundance and reciprocity?
Serviceberry, which has so many other names as well, but that it's the connotation of a serviceberry, of all of the services that this plant provides for us, were intriguing to me because I tend to think about the ways in which plants and other beings live is that they have gifts that they give to the whole ecosystem. We might call those ecosystem services, we might call them natural resources, but in an indigenous way of thinking, they're gifts. We haven't earned those berries, we didn't work for them. Yes, they appeared, right? In this wondrous way. And the fact that we think about them or that they are named service berries puts me in mind of them as the emblem for a reflection on economics, which is, we are told, systems of delivery of goods and services to humankind. So serviceberry seems to me to be just the right emblem of talking about the economy of nature. How does nature develop? How does nature deliver flourishing to all the beings that are in that web of reciprocity? And what might we learn about our own human economy as a result?
So a really, really interesting idea that you talk about a lot in both the Serviceberry and in Braden Sweetgrass is this idea of the gift economy. So I wonder if you can explain to me what exactly is the gift economy and why is this something that's so important for us to think about when we're considering our relationship with the planet?
That thinking about the world, let's just take the Serviceberry for an example, as a bringer of gifts, as opposed to a commodity or a natural resource, is a really fundamental frame shift. Because when we think about the world as a natural resource or a commodity, we think we own it. We think we're in charge of it, right? And that we can control its fate. Whereas when we think about those berries or those bird songs or the rain as a gift, we are much more tender with it. When we think about the world as gift, we automatically remember that when someone gives us a gift, we're filled with gratitude, and we want to give them a gift back. Whereas if it's a commodity, if it's something that I just bought, I don't have any relationship with the clothing or the store, right? I've paid my money, no relationship. Whereas if it's a gift, it cultivates mutual responsibility. And I fear that one of the reasons that we are here on the precipice of climate catastrophe is that we've been thinking about the world as if we owned it, as if we were in charge, not as if it was a gift for which we have moral responsibility.
Inherent in the idea of the gift economy and of reciprocity with the world is the idea that we should use the gifts of the planet, but we should also give gifts in return, right? And so why is it so important that we do use the gifts that are given to us? And what kinds of gifts can we give in return?
Yeah, that big question of saying, well, which is really the thread of the Serviceberry is in return for this gorgeous bucket of berries, what can I give back in return for those gifts? And the book is really an exploration of that. It might be that there's a very physical way that I can do that in caring for those trees. And being sure that, managing pests, for example, and being sure that there's adequate soil moisture, nutrition, all of those sorts of things that humans have agency in doing. But there are also indirect ways of reciprocity. I really care about those berries because I care about the birds that are being fed there. Where do those birds live? Maybe my act of reciprocity is a donation to my local land trust so that the birds and the wild service berries have a place, right? Maybe my act of reciprocity is political action to be able to really support environmental protection and climate protection. So it's always this call to say, well, in return for this gift, what will you give? And that's the question around how gift economies work, is saying, what do I have in abundance that therefore I can share? And I would say I have a lot of love and care in abundance. How do I share that? Well, I will share that in both tending the natural world and in tending a cultural community to try to change your worldview toward more responsible management.
Okay, well.
I'd like to pause here and just check to see what this stimulates in our crew. Certainly some ideas that we've had, encountered before. And I will say that this is part of how we try to understand an indigenous frame of mind, but also look to how it can inform our practices. And one of the things that has come to me in exploring the Serviceberry is that, like a lot of you, I've been exposed to other religions and ways of forming faith communities and such like that. And one of the things that keeps drawing me to Lutheranism, and I don't mean to diss other groups, but is that service seems to be such an important component of Lutheran behavior. Service, service, service. So I like to think of Lutherans as serviceberries. So there you go, claiming it, I guess.
I've been called worse.
Yeah, yeah. So the connection I saw, and also to the faith we share, is grace, and service is how one responds to gifts freely given, which I heard a lot of that when we're talking about the service.
And I assume everyone could hear that present. I don't know how it picks up. Jacob, good enough. Good, thank you. Excellent, grace.
I feel a connection to themes of stewardship from our gospels and even the Old Testament. That we're not the owners of the world around us, but we're here to make sure that it works well. And there's something for people that come in.
Yes.
Oh my God, there's so much a change in and then came to give me, and then I know the time of the fast one. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Says, there's not, and someone will have that. Oh, you don't say things from nature until they're ready to give them.
Tuning into the cycles and paying attention to that. Yeah.
I also want to share a story from this week. So Reverend Denver Jacobs, who's a native pastor, has preached here. He's agreed to be an honorary co-chair of our capital campaign, which is really exciting. And so we've shown him the 3 houses here that would be torn down to make that 600 building. And he said, well, when it comes time to do that, I see there are trees here too that will have to be cut down. And so when the time comes for that, and he said, I got that Indian perspective to make me help, let's have a ceremony thanking the trees for all that they've done for us. And for think about all those trees that those trees have been witness to on this site over so many years. So I just like felt him drinking this very wisdom industry things through how we're treating this land right now, and felt really blessed by that.
Yes, Lydia.
I'm not sure if I say, was it from the same race or was it? But I was thinking about how her point about the necessity of building relationships acts as a natural curve. And that ties in really well with what you were saying about race, where there's this earth and Roman chicks, where it says, well, what should we do? Keep on sitting so God community where, it's this idea where race is given, but that doesn't mean that we should just consume blindly. Instead, the whole point is this relationship between what you are calling on, which is it's a natural curve on this kingdom, right? And carefulness to think about our gratitude and our relationship and manage to appreciate it. And that in itself is the brakes on over
Flow. Yes.
Actually, I'm thinking about what Pastor Martha said. I agree to disagree. Because I think, when we cut down those trees, when we do that on their land, I think that's not necessary. And I think that's I think that's I think it's needed to cut down the trees on their own land.
It's really a lot.
Yeah, let's keep the trees alive, so we don't cut down the indigenous land. It's still land. If they want to cut it down, only they can do that, but as white people, that's not our right, as white people. It's against what we want now.
And I hear the pain that
Oh,
you feel
that's the pain.
related, yeah, feel related to that. Thank you, Sam.
All indigenous people, it is their right to do that,
Yeah.
but as us, like as white people, we don't have that right.
And I'll just jump in to say that, I think that being open to our connection to the natural world is also opening us to the pain of what is happening around us and our kin.
Yeah.
Anissa.
I was listening this morning before I came, and I was thinking about the difference that she was talking about between abundance and scarcity, right? That's a theme that we've explored a lot, and the natural world has a lot to teach us about it. Because yes, there's an abundance of resources that we can use. If we overconsume, and don't understand that that's bad, but we can also learn from scarcity, because she was pointing out, if there's a drought, there is gonna be scarcity. And so then the diversity of what's available to us is important. And so we can go, if there's not service berries because they're out of season, then let's go on to something else.
And it helps us go with the flow of the seasons and not, have everything as we want it, but everything as we need.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
No, my first.
Amy and I picked out some quotes that we wanted to feed into the conversation. And this, my first one is exactly, follows up what Kimmer would say in response to Anissa's point. It's just a couple of sentences. Indigenous people traditionally have moved in an annual cycle through their homelands to where the foods are ready. Instead of changing the land to suit their convenience, they change themselves. That's think about my years of visiting grocery stores. Eating with the seasons is a way of honoring abundance by going to meet it when and where it arrives. A world of produce warehouses and grocery stores enables the practice of having what you want when you want it. We force the food to come to us at considerable financial and ecological cost, rather than following the practice of taking what has been given to us, each in its own time. Okay? So that's a kind of just amplifies what you were saying, and it's true. Bananas year round from far away, gotta have them, and numerous other things. So
Yeah, mine kind of relates to that a little bit. I was struck by her comment on, going to the store, think something, done, no relationship. In fact, I have a right to go back and complain about something if it's not right, right? And I was raised like that. Don't let someone take advantage, don't do that, but the idea of like, get back and the responsibility that holds. And I definitely don't see that.
But I also think you could go to the store and have some sense of relationship with the person who's selling.
Oh, yeah,
Because it's not realistic that we're gonna go out and gather every bit of food and seeds.
No.
We need to live in relationship with those people who's homeless together
And be responsible.
and do this for, yeah.
Maybe a middle road example of that is like we participated in our first crop fair this summer, and it was so I'm going to Wide Acre and their farms here in Minnesota, and it was a real change for me to be getting the food that certain season and trying to think through. We'll probably make that even a lot of the things that you've heard before. So anyway, it just seems like that's maybe a one middle road. Find whatever you want at the grocery store versus going out and collecting all the.
Yeah. And did you find the relationship?
Yeah, I just felt so much, I really noticed, I just appreciate the flavors of the food so much more. It's almost like I could taste the care that we put into raising them, and then also, it just had me eat more mindfully.
And try things different. I turned up on. Should I start? No, leave it on. Okay.
And then, I think you feel connected to the people who actually tilled the soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that sense of belonging, and, I want to read a little bit book here, because she's really a good writer too. And she's talking about this reciprocity and gratitude. This kind of gratitude is so much more than a polite thank you, not an automatic ritual of manners, but a recognition of indebtedness that can stop you in your tracks. It brings you the realization that your life is nurtured from the body of Mother Earth. With my fingers sticky with berry juice, I'm reminded that my life is contingent upon the lives of others, without whom I simply would not exist. Water is life, meaning Machoni. Food is life, soil is life, and they become our lives through the paired miracles of photosynthesis and respiration. All that we need to live flows through the land. It is not an empty metaphor that we call her Mother Earth. Food in our mouths is the thread that connects us in a relationship, simultaneously spiritual and physical, as our bodies get fed and our spirits nourished by a sense of belonging, which is the most vital of foods. Yeah, the sticky food here. Yeah, and then, I just, the whole science of it, I talk about living in an enchanted universe. And that's, I mean, my gosh, the maples who gave their leaves to the soil, the countless vertebrates and microbes who exchanged nutrients and energy to build the humus, in which the serviceberry seed could take the root, the cedar waxwing who dropped the seed, the sun, the rain, the early spring flies who pollinated the flowers, the farmer who wielded the shovel to tenderly settle the seedlings. All part of the gift exchange by which everyone gets what they need. And we're all part of this enchanted universe of process. Responses? Yep.
I want to make a comment about Rachel Dobbs. She was on a series.
I want to make a comment about Rachel Donald. I accidentally ran into her on Substack about 6 months ago. And she has a website, A World in Crisis. And the interview that I happened to run into, she's been doing these almost weekly for 5 years. She also just recently finished a book, which we published in about 2 years. But this particular interview shook me to my very core. And it was a interview of a person named, his last name is Rao. And he's been working on the climate crisis for 20 years. And he has a different view than most. And his view is that the climate is that the major cause of climate crisis is receiving less than 0.5% attention. And it's not oil. And it's not gas. That's a secondary cause. By a minuscule. The major cause, according to him, has not been happening over 200 years. It's been happening over 10,000 years. And that has happened as a result of humans adding to their diets animal agriculture. And he says that that cause is at the very least, according to his studies, 87% of the cause of climate change. And why is that? Well, you've been talking about trees and whether we can cut them down or not. And the fact is, according to, is that over the last 10,000 years, we have reduced the forests of the world by half. Just think about that. By half. And what is the cause of that reduction? The cause of that reduction is primarily animal agriculture. And it's primarily the worst offenders. There's many offenders, but the worst offenders is the beef industry and the pork industry. And it's also more to the west than the rest of the world, but it's spreading. It's actually getting worse because the rest of the world is copying us rather than the other. How much of the Amazon jungle has been reduced in the last 50 years?
Tell us what you've done first.
Well, I actually did that accidentally. I did that for diabetes, but I went on a vegetarian diet about 2 years ago. But he says, if everyone in the world went on a vegetarian diet, we could increase, that would free up enough land to make major replacements in forests of the world. And trees do, they've been doing it for thousands of years. I mean, they know how to do it. And they don't only handle the animal agriculture issue, they handle the other 6 crises we're involved in. Trees do, they drink up the poisons and store it in their trunks. Biodiversity, another crisis, relates to that too. There's a person in Ireland who bought an island 20, 30 years ago, and he just left it alone. You don't even have to restore forests. They'll restore themselves if you leave them alone. And examples of that are the Chernobyl site where the atomic bomb was dropped. That's returned into forest. Or the 38th parallel, it's turned into biodiversity and forest. I mean, if you like planting trees, that's great, he says, but you don't need to. You need to fit. What you need to do is stop and let nature do what it does. And the amazing thing is, in the last 300 years, since we've been having all the problem with oil, the trees have taken care of, even though it's left, has taken care of 3/4 of all that stuff, all that crap. And now it's reduced because because it's moving in the wrong direction. It's reduced to 2/3. So it's getting worse rather than better present time. That's probably enough for now.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's so cute.
Indeed, Bruce is moving us to solutions, the changes and all that. And we're going to focus more on this next session in terms of the economy. But this all flows into this structure that people create, which we call the economy, and how it is serving us or not. Let's see. Anyway, but maybe I'll leave that for later. And just to raise, as Bruce has, how can you say that it's a good economy if it is actually destroying our capacity for survival? So, not to mention all our kin. Hey, good.
Thinking about this concept in environmental policy called an externality, the concept of externality, which I think many of us are familiar with, and it's this idea that the costs of using a commodity are not borne by the user, or it's not fully borne by the user. And I think about that in some of what has been raised this morning. Part of it is, how could we possibly benefit of environmental assets, if we want to use sort of economic language? And then, it sounds like we'll dig into this a little bit more fully in a future session, but just the sort of time frame of our existing economy, which is quarterly sort of earnings reports. And but that couldn't possibly appreciate the sort of generational timescale that we're talking about relative to our environment. So maybe to dig into further in it.
You know, another example that she gives, she's very aware of how the language we use to talk about things insinuates itself into our imagination. And I think that it's a spiritual task of transformed imagination that the Indigenous community is inviting us into. What if we transformed our imagination and understood things differently? She gives an example. She said, I was speaking at a school in a university that had a school of natural resources. And she says, but they were having a mission study and they were going to change their name. And what's natural resources? I've heard people object to human resources as a way of talking about people. It's objectifying, it's all financial. This is natural resources. So she says, well, I think you should call it the School of Earthly Gifts. And they all went, oh, yes, that's wonderful. We'd love to do that. We think that's terrific. But they didn't. They changed it to something else. She doesn't report what that was, but the dean said to her afterwards, well, if we said earthly gifts, that would kind of put the kibosh on grinding up trees, wouldn't it? Oh, yeah. So language and the way in which our imagination forms us in this, I think is really important. Well, let me also read a little section where she talks about despair. Because we're hoping for gift economies. She says we're already starting to experiment with those, and she means not only Indigenous people, but in the culture. Friends invite us to dinner or pass an outgrown stroller to a neighbor with a new baby. We share lasagna with people who are needed in our communities, and so on. She says the question that's often asked is how do we take gift economies from individual relationships and scale them up? What does it mean? I have to say that I'm not sure that's the right question. Why does everything have to be expanded? It's the small scale and context that makes the flow of gifts meaningful. But if gift economies are to have impact, I'm willing to think about what they might look like on a community scale. And she gives the examples of little libraries and of public libraries, where something actually a great, a lot of stuff that's costly and valuable is there, but it's really shared. There was the toy library, right? Which you don't have to buy toys. You can get a membership and share toys with other families and pass them on as you outgrow them. And these things are not going to, in themselves, replant the forest, right? However, we need to have our imaginations transformed, right? John and Anna share a snowblower with 4 families of 4 ethnicities. It's wonderful. Things that would expand our imagination. It's a little bit like the story Martha has shared in sermons about the hunter in the Amazon who had a big kill, a big chunk of meat, and was going to bring it back to the village. And the anthropologist assumed that the economically rational thing to do would be to dry it and stock it away in your pantry, in your hut, forever, and keep it for the coming season of scarcity. No, he had a big feast instead and said, I'm going to store the meat in the belly of my neighbor. So these are just imaginative ways of moving beyond the kind of white culture that I was brought up in anyway, right? So stretching the imagination, and that's what the Indigenous people are inviting us into.
I think our neighborhood quilting is a little bit okay on that.
I think our neighborhood quilting is a bit of gift economy because people give us what they no longer can use. And many times it's really beautiful stuff. And we make it into something that's usable. It's not always absolutely gorgeous, but it is functional and it warms people. And the ones we made yesterday are going to go to the St. Paul Public School Reach program for families who are homeless. I've just learned last week that 2,200 children in the St. Paul School District are homeless or have home insecurity. They might be sleeping in somebody's, and these are families with young children. So they need blankets of all sizes. And so I think it's gift economy, and it goes to various places. But I also need to share a little story. The woman, Heather, whose last name I've forgotten, who is the head of the REACH program in the St. Paul Public Schools, came to Marvella this week and spoke and shared the needs and whatever. But I went up and she said they need blankets. So I went up and asked, would you like quilts? Because our church makes quilts. And she said, oh, yes, people love quilts. But she said, what church do you go to? And so I said, Our Savior's on 24th in Chicago. She said, I did my senior research at Hamlin there before the fire. And she said, the thing I remember about that church is there weren't all that many people in the pews, but boy, did they do outreach. So clap yourself on the back a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, it is so true that, as Robin says, abundance is created by recycling, by reciprocity. There's, this flow that keeps moving around, and sometimes it's reputational, if you will, in terms of, oh yeah. But there's so many ways that we impact each other, and even though the flourishing, we look at this economy, which clearly is not working for so many people, like those 2,200 children. And then, obviously we need to change things at a larger scale, but in the meantime, we can work on the flourishing of community in the smaller scale. And let me just get this piece in, which is a favorite of mine. I suppose in an industrial economy, production is the source of the flow, rooted in human labor and the conversion of earthly gifts to commodities. But so often that production is at the cost of great destruction. When an economic system actively destroys what we love, isn't it time for a different system? Some powerful feminist thinkers call us to remember that gift giving is among the most primal of human relationships. Each of us begins our life as the recipient in what Genevieve Vaughn has called a maternal gift economy. The flow of goods and services from mother to newborn. When the mother nurses her child, the boundary of the individual self becomes permeable, and the common good is the only one that matters. The maternal gift economy is a biological imperative. There is no meritocracy or earning of sustenance. Mothers do not sell their milk to their babies. It is pure gift so that life can continue. The currency of this economy is the flow of gratitude, the flow of love, literally in support of life. And many of us can almost feel that oxytocin right now, right? By analogy, can the sustenance from the breast of Mother Earth be understood as a maternal gift economy? These feminist thinkers argue that giving and taking in this sense are a fundamental way of caring for each other without the intervention of states or markets. Scholars like Mickey Kashtan are exploring how the philosophy and practice of maternal gift economy might move social organization toward justice and sustainability. If the sun is a source of flow in the economy of nature, what is the sun of a human gift economy? The source that constantly replenishes the flow of gifts. Maybe it is love.
Kenny, yes, Nate.
Well, I just feel like I should reflect this. Such a maternal gift.
First of all, thank you, Mother. Second, I want to reflect. Often we have amazing adult forums here at our church, and they challenge me. And especially as somebody who, let's just say, is intertwined with the current economic system, it's hard to, I mean, it's great to be inspired by Bruce and think, oh, I should stop eating meat too. It's really hard to be like, oh man, now I gotta stop eating meat. Or to be, convinced by that sort of natural resources, earthly gifts. Now we can't grind up trees, we can't burn wood, we can't do all these things. And I think what's really powerful for me in hearing some of the stories from this book is that it's not so much about what you can't do, or like there are plenty of things that we are doing wrong, and there's a lot to learn from that. But there are also all these examples that everybody shared about already there are aspects of a different kind of economy and a gift economy around us. So when I'm sometimes feeling bad about myself, disappointed in myself for what I am doing in the sort of non-gift economy, it's also important to reflect to start that there's opportunities to take steps in the existing gift economy that is there in many different ways. So I just want to share that so I don't get too down on myself.
Thank you. I think, I don't know if you mentioned about our Wopila gathering, in all nations. Oh, okay, great. So the main reason. Sure. Okay. But I also wanted to, I like this quote actually. So the Wopila gathering, the speakers Dorothy will share that. But in here, it says, I live in a relation. Oh, okay, but I just wanted to say that we are learning about Serviceberry. We're imagining what we could do with the earth, things that are surrounding us. But it's also sitting into a possibility of ways that we can accompany one another, especially with our indigenous folks, beloved community at all nations, and that but we are in relationship with Indigenous Protector Movement, where we are gifting our property to another strong and thriving community. And I just want us to feel that in your body and in ways that things are hard, but it's also amazing to even share that opportunity that they are experiencing and that continue to be our experience here at our Saviors. Yeah.
Pastor Kelly Sherman Conroy of that church did offer us this gift acknowledgement that Esther pointed to. And we're going to close by reading that together. But first of all, look at the back of your sheet. And this will give us some steps going forward. We'll talk again next week. Some of you may want to find this book. It's a beautiful little book. You could read it and then give it to someone for Christmas. Right? And then pass it on and pass it around a circle. 3 invitations are on the back of your sheet. Let me start with the one in the middle. Do you remember the last couple of years on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we have invited All Nations Indian Church and others to do something here to honor the relationship with the Indigenous communities, okay? This year, they have invited not only us, but also several other ministry partner churches to come to their space, and they want to give. There's not room for all of us to go. So 12 people from our Saviors are going to go, starting with the reparations team and the pastors, I believe, and then maybe a few others. But all of us have been invited first to participate through this study, but also to build centerpieces for the 2 tables at which our people will sit, okay? Centerpieces that express our gratitude and that reflect this sense of reciprocity with nature and abundance that we are learning to appreciate and share. Okay, so next time, bring an earthly gift for which you are grateful. To add to the centerpiece, we will send with our reparations team and pastors to the Wopilla dinner at All Nations Indian Church.
It's an invitation.
It's an invitation, yeah. If you don't, you can still come to the forum if you don't bring anything. But Amy already started with a gourd here and some beautiful leaves. We'll get big bowls out of the kitchen and put them in there and create centerpieces, okay? Yes. Okay, now the first one was take a gratitude walk. This also was a suggestion from All Nations Indian Church, reflecting their own practice. Take a gratitude walk. Move slowly through a place near you, outdoors, maybe indoors even, and notice gifts, things you can see, hear, smell, or feel. Ponder the connection of each gift to the earth. End by placing your hand on your heart and saying, I am grateful. Let this simple act become a prayer of recognition of Creator's generosity. And while you're doing that, you may discover something that you'd like to bring for the centerpiece. Yeah,
Including something that symbolizes it, like air, and something that symbolizes. Thank you very much for the discussion today, and I look forward to more next week. We're going to close with that paragraph at the end of the first page. But before we read this together, I'm also going to say that another invitation for next week is to think about how you might personalize this statement, how you might improve it for your own understanding of explaining relationship. And what it is being presented to us again by All Nations, Pastor Kelly, is that while we do a land acknowledgement, which is very appropriate often to remember the peoples who were first here on this land, we have also, it is important to have a relationship acknowledgement. And so please join me as we close and read this relationship acknowledgement together. I live in relationship with this place and all ladies. I have learned what it means to be a good relative, to listen before I speak, to offer before I take, to walk gently with all beauty. And I commit to walk alongside, unfed, to ask, unassumed, to honor existing gifts before offering. I leave my relationship to all its things why I belong because I have a relationship with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.